p.m. I acknowledge the traditional owners, the Garryella people on whose lands we are now meeting, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Item 3, the attendances are noted there accurately. 3.2, there is no phone connections. There's no apologies in 3.3. There is no request for leave of absence at 3.4. At 3.5, we have the CEO has a disclosure of impartial interest in item 11.4.5, which will be addressed when we get to that particular item. Item 4, application for leave of absence. There is none. Item 5, response to previous questions. There is none. Item 6, which is public time, as the public are no longer invited to the meetings due to the virus. Are there any questions that we've received or statements that we've received from the public?
No, we've received none, Mr. Commissioner.
Okay, there being no questions or statements received from the public, we'll move on. I do urge any member of the public that's watching that wishes to lodge a question in relation to council that they lodge them a day before the next council meeting, and that will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. So all of item 6 is dealt with. Item 7, questions from members without notice. There is nil. Item 8 is the announcements by the presiding member without discussion. That just gives a list of some of the meetings that I've had in the last month. Item 9, I declare that I've given due consideration to all matters contained in this agenda. Item 10, I confirm that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held Wednesday the 25th of March 2020 is a true and correct record of that meeting. We now move to the agenda items. Item 11.1.1, the changes to reserves, reserve titles and purposes. This report has a significant structural change to our reserve funds, setting up a structure that council is responsible for and for the management of all our reserves. Some people have supported a structure that requires an external body, an external group of people to have a say on how the reserves, primarily the airport account, are spent. They will now go into a strategic reserve and to be controlled by council. The interesting matter in relation to the structure that is now replaced is that it was never set up, primarily due to the fact that it is not possible to give an external body that authority over council funds. In the future, the Strategic Committee will report to council on expenditure from the strategic reserve and fit into the strategic community plan and the corporate business plan. A review of our structures that govern the financial reserves resulted in a finding that reserves were not being utilised to their fullest potential and did not align with the current council strategies. These changes are designed to improve efficiency and align reserves. All these changes will come into effect on the 30th of June 2020. These changes will be reflected in this year's budget. The current system is consistent with our investment policy. In December 2019, Council adopted to establish a strategic committee to advise Council. This committee recommends and advises Council on matters in relation to development of a long-term financial plan, strategic community plan and corporate business plan. The proposed wealth management framework is not consistent with the legislation and would not provide a benefit to the town. Council should be the sole body that supports strategic and business plans. They are adopted by Council, who are now responsible for how funds are in fact used. I support the recommendation in relation to this item. Move on to item 11.1.2, which is the South Headland Bowling and Tennis Club's application for suspension of their loan commitments. This item is a request from the bowling and tennis club to suspend their payments on the loan during the passage of this virus. The money was first obtained in 2014 and has been in existence for some 6 years. It was for $500,000. A previous suspension was granted in 2016. The current balance of the loan is $427,551. The payments were due in February this year, and again they'll fall due in August of this year. They will be now suspended. All agencies need to support those who have been suffering due to the closures of the club and of course the restaurant. The next payment will be in February 2021. This change will not impact on Council. The suspension is for the accrual of interest also. I'd just like to mention that this has also occurred, I think exactly the same, to the yacht club. Those payments have been suspended for some 6 months. I support the recommendation in relation to this matter. Item 11.1.3. This item is to unify the charges for people with extra bins. It's a very exciting topic, I think. The changes is that all people with extra bins are to be charged the same. The charges do not impact on the service delivery, but will deliver transparency and consistency. This will cover additional services, removal of services, the commencement of services, and disputes about bin charges. I support the recommendation in relation to this matter. Item 11.1.4, rating strategies. This strategy is a summary there's a summary in the recommendations. The working behind the recommendations is as follows. Number one, the work is predicated on no increase in rates due to the coronavirus in this year. Rates revenue is approximately 61% of our operational revenue. Point 3. Council's budget requirements in each financial year is to deliver services and community infrastructure as outlined in the strategic plan. This year there is a special change, which we're explaining now. There is no requirement for ministerial approval this year. Point 5. In the history of rates, the burden has fallen on residential ratepayers. We are now moving towards uniform rating for a more balanced yield amongst ratepayers. We now propose 5 differential rate categories. The objectives are A, raise sufficient to maintain current services and infrastructure renewal to meet expectations. B, move towards uniformity across all differentials. C, improve transparency and provide a level of certainty for all ratepayers. And D, establish greater equity across all sectors. In summary, the 2020-21 rates model continues towards a uniform rate model. However, in the area of UV mining and others categories, there is a reduction of approximately 50,000 in rates income. We have frozen the rate in the dollar in relation to UV mining and mining and others category. I'll touch upon that particular item a little bit later in this, in discussing this item. The following table sets out what was in place last year compared to what is proposed in this year. GRV residential is $13,062,454. In 2020-21, exactly the same amount is expected to be raised, will be raised. The GRV mass and tourism allocation is $2,774,084. Exactly the same amount is to be collected this next financial year. The UV mining and others at present, last year we collected $21,925,937. This year we expect, with the current valuations, to receive $21,872,988. And the UV pastoral is $125,805. We expect to receive the same amount this year, in the next financial year. We will see a significant expansion on infrastructure and increased pressures on state and federal governments to fund projects. At the same time, we have never been in a better position to borrow for infrastructure projects. When the UV mining and others valuation comes in, which it happens every year, if the valuation goes down, our revenue will fall in line with the valuation. If it rises, the rates take will rise. Any money that is increased any money that is an increase will be spent on a further small business package if that occurs. But of course, if it goes the other way, we will lose revenue. In relation to this item, I support the recommendation contained in the recommendation. I think I've pulled one too many over. Okay, now I'm back on track. Yep, that's right. Okay, summary of financial activity for the period ending the 29th of February 2020. I shouldn't have ripped the page out. This report is the normal monthly report that has no exceptional amounts that need explanation. The attachment 2 at note 12 is the explanation of material variances. The notes show that show progress in funding projects from last budget. The threshold for requiring explanation in capital projects is 10% or $10,000, whichever is the greater, with all other variances of 10% or $50,000, whichever is the greater. The funding surplus of 2.5 million presented in audited annual financial statements and presentation on the 27th of November meeting. The net current asset position as at the 29th of February 2020 was 17.9 million, with breakdown of the cash position is the current assets, cash in investment of 249 million, restricted cash reserves 240.3 million, unrestricted cash position as at the 29th of February 2000 as 8.3 million. As a result of studying the accounts and making inquiries, I support the recommendation in relation to this matter. Item 11.3.1, public arts percentage. The purpose of this report is to adopt the new policy. The matter was initiated on the 19th of December 2019 and advertised for 21 days. The new limit on Shire projects is 2% and private projects is 1% to be spent on art. This policy provides clear objectives, provides clarity in relation to location and stronger desire to incorporate Indigenous art of local people. The objectives to increase social, cultural and economic values around Port Hedland, to celebrate art, culture and heritage, develop a strong community identification, public awareness and value for art. As I said, the private developers over $2 million will be required to spend 1% with a maximum of $150,000 in the in the town's developments, 2% to a maximum of $500,000. With the passing of this policy in a time of rapid expansion, we should quickly see improvements within the town and see an increased awareness of public art, enhancing the lives of people, of the residents of people of Port Hedland. I support the recommendation in this matter. Item 11.3.2, which is the renaming of a park. The current name of the park is the Land Care and Environmental Action Plan Park. This change of name to Strike Park is in recognition of the history of this region. In 1946, a strike commenced on the 1st of May 1946. 800 Aboriginal workers from 23 language groups walked off the stations and did not end the strike until 1949. The strike was led by three people mainly, Dooley Binbin and Clancy McKenna and Don McLeod. The three were arrested numerous times and spent time in Port Hedland prison, which is opposite the actual park. There was numerous major meetings took place in Port Hedland, and Don McLeod in fact was a resident of Port Hedland. The Port Hedland seamen or wharfies refused to load wool from the stations in 1949, which led to the scale of wages being agreed to. This was a major turning point. This then led to the creation of Yandiara Station, Strelly Station and Warralong stations. The three main activists have roads named after them in our national capital in Canberra. There's Clancy McKenna Crescent, Dooley Binbin Street and Don McLeod Lane, which is all in Canberra, which is a significant, I think, that it was of that importance to be recognised in our national capital. In 2001, the Pilbara Commission of Elders requested the change. It is not known why this did not occur when requested in 2001. Council has discussed with the Aboriginal elders, and a sculpture of the strike is in fact placed in this park. The historical information has been sourced from the town's local history office and Don McLeod's book, How the West Was Lost, and cross-referenced with the website in relation to this matter. There are submissions for and against at attachment 5 of this report. I support the recommendations in relation to this matter. Item 11.3.3, the rescinding of policy 12-002, off-site car parking, and policy 9-007, roadside, verge and reserve parking. This item is to clear up parking provisions. The history of this item is as follows. In 2004, Council adopted a policy which rapidly became out of date and was not useful. It was not a useful tool for assessing development applications, and the policy is now superfluous to requirements. And B, the town does not have a structure of system in place for cash in lieu arrangements, nor consider it appropriate. And B, provisions for 50% of bays on site has no technical basis. C, policy has not been used for some time. And D, in 2004 did not have clear and concise provisions for parking. However, in 2016, the implementation of a new and improved set of provisions for parking and enforcement was agreed to. But once again, however, with the adoption of the town's local laws, has meant that the policy is no longer relevant. So I support the recommendation in relation to this matter. These next two items are quite lengthy decisions. Development application for this is item 11.3.4. I don't know that I said that. Development application for 113 Anderson Street, Port Hedland. This matter has been to council on a number of occasions. It was first in March 2013 and sent to JDAP and was granted with the condition that it must commence prior to the 30th of March 2015, when JDAP said as follows: if the development referred to in 1 above is not substantially commenced within a period of 2 years from the date of the approval shall lapse and be of no further effect. Following on from the above, on the 12th of March 2014, changes to allow units 1 and 9 from 1 bedroom to 2 bedroom units was allowed by JDAP. In 2018, application was submitted to request an extension of time for the substantial commencement, which had lapsed for 3 years, but was granted a 2-year extension to substantially commence the period, which expired on the 12th of March 2020. There were 2 attachments to the last extension: a warning of the impact of dust and the West End land use plan. On the 20th of December 2019, the town accepted an application for extension of the original approval. The applicant was advertised, and directed to the state government agencies. Now, this process resulted in a valid objection. The town has assessed the application in accordance with the relevant planning framework and has considered the objections and submissions received. It contradicts the intention of the applicable planning framework, in particular the draft Port Hedland West End Improvement Scheme number 1. The State Administrative Tribunal, otherwise called SAT, has established 3 principles to consider in granting extensions. The first of those: has the planning framework changed substantially since the original approval? 2, would it be approved today? 3, whether the applicant actively pursued the implementation of the approval. In considering the above, the first, the conditions have changed significantly with the local planning scheme number